Hi everyone, and welcome to the wrap of week 2. Thanks for sticking with us and persevering in difficult times with the project management module. I think it's important to maintain some sort of normality amongst so much change. So continuing on with the things that you were doing 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I think it's important to maintain similar habits. So I'm now recording this from my home. Welcome to my home, and I imagine you're all home as well. And so yes, this is the wrap of week 2. I've made some notes that I'll be working through as we go. So the discussion from last week, as I mentioned previously, there were some discrepancies around what people thought. Some people argued strongly for one thing, and some people felt another way. That's actually what I was hoping for in these discussions. As with the polls, I was aiming for questions that might provide a variety of responses. Given that there's no real right or wrong answer to the questions I'm posing, but rather discussion points. So one of the polls was around a work breakdown structure and whether you find it useful or not. And so currently there were 16 people that were strongly agreeing that it is useful, just less than half, I think. But still, so they were at one polar extreme, and at the other end there was still a few people that were strongly disagreeing. They didn't think it was particularly useful at all to have a work breakdown structure as part of a research project. Now the work breakdown structure really is just a fancy name for a to-do list that is ordered and in a structured way. I love a to-do list, let's face it. They're pretty handy, so I'm all in favour of a work breakdown structure. Perhaps what I'm not so much in favour of is calling it a work breakdown structure to non-project management initiated people, because they'll have no idea what you're talking about. So good for those people that find it completely useless, but you will need some sort of plan, of course, to work out what you're going to be doing at any one time. What are you going to be doing next? Let me see. Now, the discussion question for the online classroom today, this week, revolved around the stakeholder matrix, and you were asked a question of who is the most important stakeholder. Now, unsurprisingly, most people chose a supervisor as their most important stakeholder. I anticipated that this might be the case, and that's why I asked you for your top two important stakeholders in your research project. And thankfully we did get quite a diversity in response. So thank you for sharing your responses on the online classroom. Some people, like Sophie, found it a slightly tricky exercise. People were wondering how the people involved in their project fit into the stakeholder definitions, and it's true. I've mentioned it before. We're adapting what has become a kind of a standard within some industries outside of research to the research environment. So sometimes this adaptation might not seem to click as easily as with others. There was some discussion about the role of external examiners as stakeholders. And Jennifer made an interesting point that it's difficult to know how to cater to them when you may not ever actually meet them or know who they are. But Jennifer went on to say, I guess that's no different to other unknown stakeholders like the public or consumers or patients. So that's a good observation, that even though that's one particular stakeholder that you don't know who they are, that's not uncommon. There's other industries outside of research where you don't exactly know personally who this stakeholder is. So that's a great point. it's great to see that the matrix of stakeholder power and interest was useful to some people. There were a few comments about that helping them to determine various roles within their project, so that's good. But I think overwhelmingly, the most discussed issue was whether the researcher, or you, is an actual stakeholder in this project that you're doing, in your own research project. Quite contentious. And there were varied views. Many people suggested that the researcher is external to the stakeholder structure, while others saw themselves as part of the matrix. And there were some like Rupesh, who says, if you have to remove yourself from the list of stakeholders, who else would be your stakeholder? Good point. I guess there's a few that you could choose, but are you the most important one? Is there a right or wrong answer in this one? While I completely agree, or at least I can see where the people who think that the researcher isn't part of the structure, I can see where they're coming from. I don't know that I would see it that way. I would take a more holistic or objective view, and I would think that the researcher is a stakeholder. In the context of this module for researchers project managing their research, it might not actually matter what you call yourself, as long as you identify that you have the most important role. And like I said, in kind of classic project management terminology, the way that research projects are established might not fit the structure so well. I think that particularly for the self-initiated projects, it's not as if a client has come along and said, I want to build this thing. It's you who has initiated this whole process. It's almost like you are the project. But there's still those same roles to play. Your research project still needs to be project managed. And so you probably take many roles within the project. You know, project manager, the worker, in some instances. You may be the end user. So I think it was a really good discussion to have to determine your role in it. There was some discussion from Callista, for example, around investment and identifying that the investment that you have is a critical part. Callista says, is my project and I have the most invested in it. I imagine that you're all like that, and so it's perhaps difficult to separate yourself out because of that investment. But if we take a helicopter view, and I think this was also discussed in the forum as well, that other people may see stakeholders within your project differently than you do. And it's best to try and take that helicopter view so that you can get the best overview of what's happening. And it's actually just best practice in project management as well. I think I mentioned in one of my posts or replies that it's quite standard for stakeholders to get together and kind of determine this matrix together, sort of in a collaborative way, so that everyone's on board with each person's role. So we all have multiple roles within research. Let me see. Another observation made in the discussion that I found really interesting was the role of family and how important people's spouses were in their project. I think maybe that's another key difference between other workplaces like a construction project and a research project, particularly these self-initiated ones, where you have so much invested that it's not only your investment, but it's also the people around you, your family, that strongly invest in it, that you just might not get as a project manager of a construction. So that was a great observation that and does highlight another difference between research and other standard or more standard kind of project management projects, and that the research project isn't just like a 9-to-5 job, but it's something that is part of your lifestyle. Yeah, maybe we need to call this module the lifestyle management module rather than the project management module. Research lifestyle management. So that's mostly my observations. Many people are asking questions within the forum of others, which is great, and thank you so much for answering each other's questions. I'd encourage you to continue to return to the forum to make sure that someone hasn't asked you a question that you can then answer for them, and to continue ongoing discussions with others. Thank you to Jennifer for sharing her link of Tara Babazon's vlog describing how to deal with your examiners. That was a good one. I really appreciate Tara's enthusiasm. So Tara is an academic who shares her experience for HDR students. Did you have a look at this? It's let me see. I'll show you. Hang on.
Hello again, it's Tara Babazon and welcome to Core 1 Part C. You're nearly through the first core. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have hit examination time. Let's get crunchy. So,
Okay, it kind of puts me to shame, doesn't it? Like, maybe I should be a bit more enthusiastic. So thank you for sharing that one. Please share any links that you like. The interface actually allows you to include the web address too, if you want to be experimental in the posts that you're leaving. There's an edit function there. Now, lastly, as announced during the week, there will be a prize for the most engaged student at the end of this 5-week module. So just a little extra incentive apart from all the amazing experiences that people are sharing that you can take advantage of in the online discussion forum. So I'd encourage you to jump on board for next week. The topic for next week is project processes. So talking about the life cycle of a project from the start to finish. And I shall see you in the online classroom and again with my video wrap at the end of the week. Stay safe, everyone. Enjoy the experience of being home. It's less commuting time, it's one of the advantages, and you might have heard all the birds in the background. And at lunchtime I can go and wander around the garden. It's quite nice. I'll see you next week.